Hello and welcome to today's session with Whiteboard Basics with Scott. My name is Scott Switzer and I'm an instructional designer in the Faculty Resource Center here at UCCS. I'm also a co-facilitator of this course, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about a tool that's very often used in teaching and learning, and many of us know about this. And here's a little sketch of me to give you a sense of who I am. But today's session is going to be focused on an overview of Bloom's Taxonomy, a tool that's often used in teaching and learning. Now, to give you a start on this, I've built a little bit of a framework, which is a triangle with some lines, to give you a sense of how we're going to build this taxonomy graphically. I'm first going to start with discussing the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Then I will give you a working definition of those levels, and then we'll also look at some action verbs. Now, the first level is about remembering or knowledge. It's the foundational level of Bloom's taxonomy. It really is defined as the ability to retrieve relevant knowledge from memory. Now, when you look at some of the action verbs, you'll see things like memorize and define, or one of my personal favorite is identify. You'll also see list, name, record, repeat. So these are some of the ones you may use. At the second level of Bloom's taxonomy, it has to do with understanding or understand and comprehension. And comprehension can be defined roughly as the ability to construct meaning from instructional materials that you provide to the student. Now, that may have to do with anything that you do orally for them, or written communication, or also graphic communication is another way to provide this information. Now, the action verbs that are most commonly used here are things like relate, interpret, describe is very often used, and these are another set of verbs that you can use for the understand level. The third level, which I think we all kind of aspire to, is application or apply. We want students to be able to apply the information that we have given them. So in particular, this is about carrying out or using a procedure in a given situation, but it's using the information that they've already learned from the previous two levels. And things you'll see here will be verbs like employ, execute, implement, practice, a number of other things that you will use to have students demonstrate for you that they are able to apply this information to a given situation. Now, the fourth level of Bloom's, it gets up into the higher levels. It's analyze or analysis. And when we ask students to analyze, really what we're asking them to do is break down the knowledge into its component parts. And not only that, but then be able to recognize or determine the relationships of those components either to one another, and then, of course, how they relate to a particular structure or a task that we would like the students to demonstrate. And the action verbs you'll find here get into things like distinguish, contrast. We may ask them to scrutinize or even dissect, but they're able to somehow discriminate and analyze these component parts, and being able to explain or to determine the relationships between them. The fifth level of Bloom's taxonomy has to do with evaluation or evaluate. Now, here we're asking learners to make judgments, and that those judgments are based on certain criteria or standards that we give them. But again, the focus is on using that previously learned knowledge that they've acquired from the preceding four steps. Now, when we get into this level, we're asking students to do things like argue, decide, validate, appraise, or evaluate. Then we may ask them to judge certain things or rank certain things in order. But in any case, this is sort of the evaluation level that we're asking students to get to. Now, at the final level of Bloom's taxonomy, the top level, it's about creating or synthesizing. And here we're asking students to literally combine or reorganize the various elements that they've been taught to form a coherent or more functional whole. Or, the other thing is that you could ask them to put this into a new pattern or a structure or an idea that is sort of uniquely theirs. Now, I don't have enough room here, so I'm asking you to kind of take a look below, but I've sketched out a couple of things here below that you might use for action verbs, including generate, produce, develop, construct. They're actually building a new whole. So that's the framework of Bloom's taxonomy. That's going to be available to you in the course shell as a PDF file. So if you didn't